Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Earth, where we listen for the quiet histories hidden just beneath the surface of our world. Tonight, we're not going to explore the harshest landscapes or the coldest epochs. Instead, we're going to look at a familiar map, the one we all know, and ask a quiet, unsettling question. What if the maps are wrong? Not in their details of borders and cities, but in their illusion of permanence. What if a real vibrant world, a country, the heart of a continent, lies drowned and forgotten just offshore, hidden in plain sight beneath the waves? Not a mythical Atlantis of crystal towers, not a legend, but a real, temperate and thriving homeland of our direct ancestors. A world of vast rivers and ancient woodlands that connected lands we now see as separate. A place that was, for thousands of years, the center of the human story in Europe, before the rising waters of a new age washed it from the face of the earth and almost from memory. If that sounds like a fantasy, it is. But it's a fantasy that modern science is proving to be true. The question is no longer if this world existed, but what was it truly like? What did the air smell like? What did the rivers sound like? And what were the dreams of the people who called that drowned country home? Before we begin our search for clues, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? Are you near an ocean, a lake, or even a quiet river? Can you hear the water? Funny, isn't it? Our topic is a world lost to the water, and yet here we are, scattered across the continents, connected by these invisible waves, sharing this one quiet moment. Wherever you are, I'm so glad you're here. If this kind of journey into our planet's hidden past is something you find compelling, I'd be thankful if you considered tapping like or subscribing to the channel. It helps these lost stories, these echoes from the deep, to finally reach the surface. No pressure at all, of course. Just an invitation, like a strange and ancient object pulled up from the seabed, hinting at a much deeper story. So settle in, maybe close your eyes if you can, and let your thoughts sink just for a while below the surface of the present moment. We're going to take a journey down into the cold, quiet darkness of the North Sea, because our story begins not in the distant past, but in the present, on a modern fishing boat with a single mysterious clue that was pulled, dripping and silent, into the light. The North Sea is not a gentle place. It is a turbulent, cold and unforgiving expanse of grey water. A place of hard work and deep history. For the crew of a beam trawler, a day like this is routine. The wind is sharp, the salt spray coats every surface, and the real work begins when the nets are hauled in. The winch groans under the strain, its steel cables pulling a heavy bounty from the seabed, some 40 meters below. The net comes up, a writhing silver cascade of cod and plaice spilling onto the deck. But as the crew begins to sort the catch, something else tumbles out. It's not a fish, and it's not a rock. It is dark, heavy, and strangely shaped. One of the fishermen picks it up. It's a piece of bone stained the color of dark peat from its long sleep in the mud. It feels ancient, and it is clearly not just a bone. It has been worked. One end is sharpened to a point, and the base has a series of delicate, deliberate barbs carved into its side. It is a tool, a harpoon head crafted with immense skill and patience from the antler of a red deer. This single object, pulled from the deep, is a ghost. It is a message in a bottle from a world that has completely vanished. It poses a question that is both simple and profound. Who made this? Who was the person that spent hours carving these barbs? Who tied this point to a wooden shaft? Who stood on a shoreline that is now 100 feet beneath the waves and hunted with this very tool? What was their world? This is not a story of a mythical sunken city like Atlantis. This is the story of a real place, a lost subcontinent that was once the heart of Ice Age Europe, a world that modern science has named Doggerland. It is a story we are only just beginning to piece together, an immense puzzle whose pieces lie scattered across the dark, cold floor of the sea. Our journey tonight is an investigation. We are archaeological detectives, and our mission is to reconstruct this vanished world and the lives of the people who called it home. The clues are few, and they are fragile. A piece of worked bone pulled from the mud, the fossilized stump of an ancient tree, a fragment of a human skull brought up in a fisherman's net. Each artifact is a quiet whisper from the past, and if we listen closely, we can begin to hear its story. The person who made this harpoon did not live in a world of open sea. They lived in a vast, low-lying plain of wooded river valleys and sprawling marshes. They would not have thought of themselves as living on a bridge, but in the center of their known world. The great rivers that flowed through their lands, the ancestors of the Thames and the Rhine, were not the familiar waterways we know, but great meandering arteries that flowed south across a green and fertile landscape to a distant coastline. To understand their world, we must first unmake our own. We must forget the modern map of Europe, with Great Britain as a proud and separate island. We must imagine a time when the chalk cliffs of Dover were not a coastline, but inland hills overlooking a vast wooded plain that stretched unbroken all the way to the shores of what is now the Netherlands and Denmark. This is the first part of our investigation, to drain the sea and reveal the ghost on the map. We will use the tools of modern science, the sonar beams that can paint a picture of the seabed, to digitally peel back the water and look upon the face of this drowned land. We will trace the paths of its lost rivers, map the shores of its great central lake, and identify the highlands that would have been the last islands to sink beneath the waves. Only then, when we can see the world as they saw it, can we begin to populate it. We will take these fragile clues, these echoes from the deep, and breathe life back into them. We will journey into a day in the life of a Mesolithic family, to feel the warmth of their fire, to hear the sounds of their language, and to understand the skill and courage it took to survive in a world teeming with the great beasts of the post-glacial forest. Our harpoon head will become more than just an artifact. It will become a key, a portal back to a lost and forgotten home.
So, let the story begin. Let the roar of the modern world fade away, and let the quiet whisper of this ancient one rise from the deep. We are about to embark on a journey to a world hidden in plain sight, a history buried not in sand but in water. The story of Doggerland. The bone harpoon sits in the palm of a hand, a tangible link to a world that now lies in perpetual twilight at the bottom of the sea. To understand the life of the person who made it, we cannot stay here in the present, aboard a rocking trawler. We must first do what seems impossible. We must go back, and we must drain the sea. We must watch as the water pulls back, and the lost land of Doggerland emerges from the deep, revealing its secrets layer by layer. Our journey begins not in Doggerland itself, but thousands of miles away, in the frozen heart of the Ice Age. The existence of Doggerland is a direct consequence of the great ice sheets that we have visited before. The Laurentide over North America and the Scandinavian over Europe were not just geological forces, they were the great thieves of water. During the coldest periods, they drew incalculable volumes of moisture from the atmosphere, which in turn drew it from the ocean. For every snowflake that fell on those ice sheets and did not melt, the global sea level dropped by an infinitesimal amount. Multiplied over tens of thousands of years, this tiny effect became a world-altering transformation. The ocean did not simply vanish, it retreated with a geological patience, a slow and majestic process that would have been imperceptible from one day to the next, but utterly transformative over the course of a human lifetime. Let us imagine we can speed up this process, that we can stand on the white chalk cliffs of ancient Britain and watch this great unveiling happen. At first, the change is subtle. The sea level begins to drop. Familiar bays become shallow tidal flats. Rocky islands that were once a dangerous boat journey from the coast are now connected to the mainland at low tide by a spit of sand and stone. For the coastal people of this time, the world is simply getting a little bigger. The fishing grounds are changing, the coastline is becoming more complex, but the essential nature of their world remains the same. But as the ice sheets to the north continue to grow, pulling ever more water from the sea, the retreat accelerates. Now the change is undeniable. We watch as the sea pulls back past the old coastlines, exposing the continental shelf. This is not the barren, sandy seafloor we might imagine. It is a rich, post-glacial landscape, already being colonized by hardy grasses and pioneering plants. Great ridges and hills that were once underwater shoals now become long, sweeping peninsulas, pointing the way out into the newly emptying basin of the North Sea. And as the sea falls further still, a new and revolutionary feature emerges. The great rivers of northern Europe, the Thames, the Rhine, the Meuse, are no longer meeting the sea at their familiar mouths. They are now flowing out across the exposed plain, seeking a new, more distant coastline. They begin to merge, their waters combining in the low-lying center of the basin. We are witnessing the birth of a new river system, the arteries of a new subcontinent. The Thames, which once flowed into the English Channel, now turns north, joining with the Rhine to form a single mighty river that flows through the heart of this emerging land.
Imagine you are a hunter, part of a small band exploring these new territories. You stand on a high chalk ridge, a place that was, for all of your ancestors, the edge of the world. But now you look out not upon an ocean, but upon a vast green and brown plain stretching to the horizon. In the distance, you can see the shimmering line of this great central river, its banks lined with the dark green of nascent woodlands. This is not just a new hunting ground, it is a new world opening up before you. A world of incredible promise, but also of great mystery. What lies beyond that great river? What other peoples, what other spirits, what other herds inhabit that vast new land? Now, let us journey to the coldest point, the last glacial maximum, 20,000 years ago. The sea level has reached its lowest point, 400 feet below its modern level. The North Sea, as we know it, is gone. In its place lies the complete and magnificent landscape of Doggerland. With the tools of modern science, with the patient work of seismic mapping and sonar imaging that has peered through the water and the silt, we can now paint a detailed portrait of this lost world. It was a landscape of immense variety. The western part, attached to Britain, was an area of rolling hills and uplands, a continuation of the familiar English countryside. To the east, attached to the Netherlands and Denmark, the land was much flatter, a vast, low-lying coastal plain. In the very center of Doggerland, in the deepest part of the North Sea basin, lay a huge, shallow, freshwater lake. This was the heart of the landscape, fed by the great rivers that flowed in from all sides. Its shores would have been a paradise for wildlife and for the humans who hunted them. A sprawling network of marshes, reed beds, and fertile wetlands. We can imagine the air here filled with the cries of millions of waterfowl, the waters teeming with fish like pike and perch. This would have been one of the richest and most productive ecosystems on the entire continent. From the shores of this great lake, the land sloped gently away. The river valleys were clothed in woodlands of birch, willow, and pine, offering shelter to herds of red deer, elk,
and the formidable, giant wild cattle known as aurochs. Between the river valleys lay the open plains, grasslands that supported herds of wild horses and reindeer. This is the world our modern archaeological investigation has revealed. Our sonar maps the shape of the lost hills. Our seismic profiles trace the buried channels of the ancient rivers. And the most incredible tool of all are the sediment cores. By drilling deep into the seabed, scientists can pull up long cylinders of mud that are like time capsules. In these cores, they can find microscopic grains of ancient pollen, perfectly preserved for 10,000 years. And this pollen tells a story. It tells us with incredible precision what kinds of trees and plants grew in a specific place at a specific time. It allows us to reconstruct the ancient forests and grasslands, to know that the shores of the Great Lake were lined with hazel trees, to know that the uplands were covered in birch. The science is so precise, we can even detect layers of charcoal in these cores, the faint, ghostly evidence of ancient campfires lit by the people who lived there.
By draining the sea with our technology, we do more than just reveal a map. We reveal a home. Every feature of this landscape held a meaning for the people of Doggerland. A particular bend in the river was a good place to catch salmon. A specific hill offered a vantage point to watch for migrating herds. A sheltered valley was the best place to make a winter camp, protected from the wind. A stand of high-quality flint on a chalk ridge was a vital resource, a place you would return to again and again, the source of your tools and your survival. This was not an empty wilderness. It was a known, understood, and storied landscape. It was a world of pathways, of sacred places, of ancestral territories. The lives of the people were woven into the very fabric of this land, into the rhythm of its rivers and the turning of its seasons. And it was a world that felt permanent. For a person born in the heart of Doggerland, the idea that their entire world was, in geological terms, a temporary and fleeting thing would have been unimaginable. The Great Lake, the wooded valleys, the distant shimmering coastline, this was reality. It had been this way for all of their parents' lives and all of their grandparents' lives. The stories they told were of this land. Their spirits lived in its hills and rivers. Yet we, with our modern perspective, can see the profound fragility of their situation. We know that the fate of their entire world was tied to the climate and to the stability of those distant colossal ice sheets. We know that the same slow, patient planetary rhythm that had revealed their world would in time come to reclaim it. The story of Doggerland is the story of a people living in a beautiful, rich, but ultimately ephemeral paradise. As we continue our journey, we will leave this grand geological perspective behind, and we will step down into their world, into their lives, to a single day in the Mesolithic, to understand what it felt like to call this drowned and forgotten country home.
Before we take our final step into the world of the Mesolithic hunter, before we feel the warmth of their fire and hear the sounds of their language, we must pause. We must ask a crucial question. How can we possibly know any of this? How can we speak of the plants that grew in a drowned forest, or the path of a river that has not seen the sun for 8,000 years? The immersive journey we are about to take is not a work of pure fantasy. It is a careful reconstruction, a story built piece by piece from the faint, shadowy evidence that has survived. This is the story of the detective work, of the incredible science that allows us to read the ghost of a landscape and listen to the whispers of its lost people. For a long time, the first clues came not from scientists, but from the people who know the North Sea most intimately, the fishermen. For over a century, fishing trawlers dragging their heavy nets across the seabed in an area known as the Doggerland would occasionally pull up things that did not belong. The colossal, curved tusk of a mammoth, its ivory stained dark brown from the peat. The massive skull of an aurochs with its formidable horns. And sometimes, more mysteriously, a piece of flint that showed the unmistakable marks of human craftsmanship, or a barbed harpoon point carved from antler, like the one that began our journey. For generations, these were just curiosities, known as moorlog by Dutch fishermen, strange, dark artifacts from a time before the sea. They were compelling, but they were isolated data points, clues without a context. They proved that this land was once dry and inhabited, but they could not show us what it looked like. To do that, science needed to invent a way to see in the dark, a way to map a world that lies beneath hundreds of feet of water and thousands of years of silt.
The first great breakthrough came not with a shovel, but with sound. Modern research vessels began to systematically survey the floor of the North Sea using a technology called multi-beam sonar. Imagine a ship patiently mowing the lawn back and forth across a vast grid of grey water. With every pass, it sends down not a single beam of sound, but a wide, fan-shaped array of hundreds of them. These sound waves travel to the seabed, bounce off its surface, and return to the ship. By measuring the precise time it takes for each beam to return, a computer can build an incredibly detailed, three-dimensional map of the hidden world below. This is the technology that allows us to drain the sea. For the scientists watching the data come in, it is a moment of profound revelation. As the ship moves, a picture of a lost world scrolls onto their screens. What was once a flat, featureless nautical chart becomes a complex and dynamic landscape. They can see the gentle, sloping sides of ancient river valleys. They can trace the meandering S-shaped curves of riverbeds, the paleo-channels that are now filled with soft mud. They can identify the high ground, the rolling hills and ridges that would have been the last places to sink beneath the waves. They can even see the shoreline of the great central lake of Doggerland, as clear as if they were looking down from a satellite. The sonar map provides the blueprint, It gives us the shape of the world, the stage upon which the story of Doggerland played out. But it is a silent, empty stage. It cannot tell us what grew on the banks of those rivers or what the climate was like. To fill in that detail, to add colour and life to the map, science needed another tool, one that could read the memory of the Earth itself.
This tool is the sediment core. A research vessel positions itself at a precise location on our new map, perhaps in the middle of what we believe was a riverbed, or on the shore of the ancient lake. A long, heavy, hollow tube is then driven deep into the seabed, sometimes dozens of meters down. When it is pulled back up, it contains a perfect layered cylinder of the Earth, a vertical history of that exact spot. Each layer tells a story. A layer of coarse sand might speak of a fast-flowing river. A layer of fine, dark silt might be the bed of a quiet, slow-moving lake. And a thick, black layer of peat is the compressed remains of an ancient marsh or forest floor, a ghost of a long-dead ecosystem. Contained within these layers of mud and peat is the most incredible clue of all: microscopic, almost indestructible grains of ancient pollen. This is the science of palynology, and it is what allows us to paint the landscape of Doggerland in full color. Every plant produces pollen with a unique shape and size. Pine pollen is distinct from birch pollen, which is distinct from the pollen of grasses or shrubs. And because the outer shell of a pollen grain is one of the most durable organic substances in nature, it can survive for tens of thousands of years when preserved in the oxygen-free environment of the seabed. When scientists take a small sample from a specific layer of the core, they can identify and count every single grain of pollen within it. It is painstaking, meticulous work. A single thimbleful of mud can contain thousands of grains. But the result is a precise ecological fingerprint. It is a list of all the plants that were growing in that area at the very moment that layer of mud was deposited. By taking cores from many different locations, the picture becomes richer still. The tiny winged pollen of the birch tree tells a story of a young pioneering forest, colonizing the raw land left behind by the retreating ice. The heavy, nutty pollen of the hazel and oak speaks of a more mature, stable woodland, of a warmer and more hospitable climate. The pollen of grasses and artemisia tells us of the open plains that supported the great herds. By reading the pollen layer by layer, we can watch the landscape of Doggerland evolve through time. We can watch the forests expand. We can track the spread of the marshes. We can literally see the world changing through the eyes of its most microscopic storytellers.
These cores contain other secrets too. The shells of tiny freshwater diatoms tell us about the water quality of the ancient lakes. The fossilized heads of midge larvae can be used to reconstruct past temperatures with astonishing accuracy. We are, in effect, performing a forensic analysis of a lost world. The sonar gives us the map. The cores give us the landscape and the climate. But what about the people? Finding direct evidence of human settlement is the final and most difficult challenge. It is like searching for a handful of lost needles, not in a haystack, but in an entire field that is now at the bottom of the sea. This is the realm of the underwater archaeologist. Using the sonar maps to identify promising locations, perhaps the raised bank of a river or a small island in the ancient lake, they can deploy remotely operated vehicles or even divers to investigate. They search for subtle signs, a strange pile of rocks that might be the foundation of a shelter, or a dense collection of flint flakes that indicates a tool-making site. Discoveries are rare and incredibly precious. In a few remarkable places, like Boldnor Cliff off the coast of England, entire Mesolithic settlements have been found preserved in the silt, complete with the remains of hearths, wooden foundations, and the debris of daily life. Each of these scientific disciplines, the sonar mapping, the core sampling, the archaeology, provides one thread of the story. And when we weave these threads together, the picture of Doggerland comes into sharp, astonishing focus. The immersive scenes we are about to step into, the day in the life of our Mesolithic family, are not wild guesses. They are recreations built upon this foundation of meticulous, patient, and brilliant detective work. The science gives us the what, the where, and the when. It provides the stage, the scenery, and the props for our story.
Now it is time for the actors to enter. It is time to take this scientific blueprint and breathe life back into it, to imagine the human heart that beat at the center of this lost and silent world. The darkness before dawn in Doggerland is a cold, damp, and profoundly quiet thing. The mist born from the great central river hangs thick and heavy between the trees, smelling of wet earth, moss, and the faint, sweet scent of decaying leaves. In a small clearing, sheltered by a high bank of ancient river gravel, a cluster of circular shelters stands silent. They are made from a sturdy framework of bent saplings covered in the overlapping hides of red deer and wild boar. From a small opening in the roof of the largest shelter, a thin grey ribbon of smoke rises to meet the mist. This is our destination. This is home. Inside, the air is warm and thick with the familiar smells of wood smoke, sleeping bodies, and tanned leather. The central fire has burned down to a deep glowing bed of embers, casting a soft orange light on the faces of the 20 or so people sleeping within. They are a family, a clan, wrapped in heavy furs. This small circle of warmth is their entire universe, a sanctuary carved out of the vast, wild world outside.
One figure stirs, an old woman, her face a beautiful map of wrinkles, her hair the color of river silt.
Her name, in the soft, guttural sounds of her people's language, might mean something like, "She who remembers the sun." She is the matriarch, the keeper of the fire. She rises silently, her movements practiced and economical. She takes a few pieces of dry birchwood from a pile near the wall and places them carefully onto the embers. She blows on them gently, her breath a quiet prayer, until a small, hesitant flame flickers to life, pushing back the shadows. The day has begun. As the first pale light of dawn filters through the mist, the camp slowly awakens. The sounds are intimate and familiar, the soft murmurs of people waking, the quiet cry of a baby, the stretching and yawning of the clan's half-domesticated wolf dogs who sleep by the entrance. There is no sudden rush. Life here moves at the pace of the sun and the seasons. A young man, perhaps the old woman's grandson, emerges from the shelter. We will call him Kale. He is lean and powerful, his body a testament to a life of constant movement. He wears simple deerskin leggings and a tunic, his feet wrapped in hide boots stuffed with dry grass for insulation. He walks to the riverbank and looks out at the world. The mist is beginning to burn away under the rising sun, revealing the landscape. Before him, the great river flows wide and slow. On the far bank, a vast marshland stretches to the horizon, its reed beds alive with the cacophony of awakening birds. Behind him, the camp is nestled at the edge of a dense, ancient woodland of pine, birch, and hazel.
Today is an important day. The clan's stores of dried meat are running low. Today they will hunt. The hunt begins not with a chase, but with a ritual. Kael and 4 other hunters gather around the fire. They do not speak of the hunt directly, for to speak its name might warn the spirits of the forest. Instead, they ready their tools with a focused silence. Kael takes out his spear, its long, straight shaft of yew, polished smooth from years of use. He inspects the point, a beautiful, leaf-shaped arrowhead of grey flint, bound to the shaft with animal sinew and sealed with birch tar. He tests its edge with his thumb. It is lethally sharp. His father, the leader of the hunt, inspects a new set of arrows, their shafts fletched with goose feathers. This is not a hunt for mammoths. The last of the great giants vanished from this land centuries ago. Their prey today is just as dangerous and requires even more skill to hunt: the aurochs, the wild cattle of ancient Europe, ancestors of all modern cows, but a world apart in temperament and size. A large bull can stand 6 feet high at the shoulder, a muscular beast of dark fur with a pale stripe down its back and a set of long, wickedly sharp horns. They are notoriously aggressive and difficult to kill. The old woman, the matriarch, approaches the hunters. She holds a small carved piece of amber, its surface warm and smooth. She touches it to each hunter's forehead, murmuring a quiet blessing for a safe and successful hunt. The amber, a piece of fossilized tree resin washed up from the coast, is a sacred stone, a piece of the sun's light made solid. The ritual is complete. The hunters, accompanied by 2 of their dogs, melt into the shadows of the forest.
We follow them into the woodland. The air here is cool and damp. The light is dim, filtered through the thick canopy of leaves. The hunters move with a grace and silence that is almost supernatural. They are a part of this forest, their senses alive in a way a modern human can barely comprehend. They are reading a complex language written in bent blades of grass, overturned leaves, and the faintest of scents on the air. The dogs, their wolf ancestry still strong within them, move ahead, their noses to the ground, their bodies tense with concentration. For hours they track. This is the true work of the hunt, the patient, painstaking pursuit. It is a mental game, a deep understanding of the animal's mind and habits. They know the aurochs will be seeking a specific type of grazing in a clearing near a stream. They know they must stay downwind, that a single stray scent will ruin the entire day's work. Finally, they find them. A small herd of aurochs grazing in a sun-dappled clearing. The great bull is there, his presence radiating a formidable power. The hunters freeze, melting into the undergrowth. A silent, intricate conversation takes place between them, a language of hand signals and glances that has been perfected over a lifetime of hunting together. The plan is simple and deadly. Kale and another young hunter will circle wide, using the cover of a small ravine to get ahead of the herd. The others will wait. The tension is immense. Every rustle of a leaf, every snap of a twig sounds like a thunderclap. Kale's heart beats a slow, heavy rhythm against his ribs. He is not just a hunter, he is a provider. The lives of his family, the food for his children, depend on what happens in the next few moments.
When the signal is given, the sharp, piercing cry of a jay, imitated perfectly by his father, the trap is sprung. The hunters behind the herd leap up, shouting, shaking branches. The aurochs, startled, thunder forward, away from the noise, directly into the prepared ambush. As the great bull passes his hiding place, Kale rises and puts all of his strength and skill into a single fluid motion. His spear flies true, striking the beast high on the flank, behind the shoulder. Another spear follows from the other hunter. The bull roars in pain and fury, crashing through the forest. The hunters do not pursue immediately. They wait. The flint points of their spears are designed to cause massive internal bleeding. The hunt has now become a waiting game. While the hunt unfolds, life at the camp continues its own rhythm. The old woman and the other women of the clan are the bedrock of its economy. Their knowledge is as vital as the hunter's courage. We follow Kale's partner, a young woman named Brenna, as she works. Her morning is spent at the river's edge with her sister and their young children. They use fine nets woven from nettle fiber to catch fish in the shallows. They wade into the reed beds to pull up the starchy, edible roots of cattails. Their knowledge is a vast mental encyclopedia of the landscape. They know which mushrooms are safe to eat, which berries are sweet, which leaves can be used to soothe a cough.
When the signal is given, the sharp, piercing cry of a jay, imitated perfectly by his father, the trap is sprung. The hunters behind the herd leap up, shouting, shaking branches. The oryx, startled, thunder forward, away from the noise, directly into the prepared ambush. As the great bull passes his hiding place, Kale raises and puts all of his strength and skill into a single fluid motion. His spear flies true, striking the beast high on the flank, behind the shoulder. Another spear follows from the other hunter. The bull roars in pain and fury, crashing through the forest. The hunters do not pursue immediately. They wait. The flint points of their spears are designed to cause massive internal bleeding. The hunt has now become a waiting game. While the hunt unfolds, life at the camp continues its own rhythm. The old woman and the other women of the clan are the bedrock of its economy. Their knowledge is as vital as the hunter's courage. We follow Kale's partner, a young woman named Brenna, as she works. Her morning is spent at the river's edge with her sister and their young children. They use fine nets woven from nettle fiber to catch fish in the shallows. They wade into the reed beds to pull up the starchy, edible roots of cattails. Their knowledge is a vast mental encyclopedia of the landscape. They know which mushrooms are safe to eat, which berries are sweet, which leaves can be used to soothe a cough.
Later, Brenna sits outside her shelter, working on a large deerskin. It is stretched taut on a wooden frame. Using a scraper, a beautifully shaped tool made from a smooth grey piece of flint, she scrapes the last bits of flesh and fat from the hide. It is hard, repetitive, and skillful work. Her hands are strong and calloused. As she works, she talks with the other women. They share news. They gossip. They teach their daughters how to identify the best reeds for weaving. The children play nearby, their games a perfect imitation of the adult world. The little boys have miniature spears, practicing on logs and tufts of grass. The little girls have small baskets, gathering interesting rocks and flowers. They are learning,
constantly absorbing the skills and knowledge they will need to be a part of the clan. In another part of the camp, an old man, too old to hunt the great beasts, sits in the sun. He is a master flint napper. We watch as he takes a large, raw nodule of flint. With a hammerstone of quartzite, he strikes the nodule with a sharp, precise blow. A large flake of flint shears off. He repeats this, turning the core, his mind seeing the shape of the tools hidden within the stone. He then switches to a softer hammer, a piece of antler for the finer work. With delicate, controlled taps, he begins to thin one of the flakes, shaping it into a leaf point for a spear. With a final, difficult technique, pressure flaking, using a pointed piece of antler to press off tiny, final flakes, he creates a razor-sharp serrated edge. In his hands, a dull rock has become a masterpiece of functional art, a tool as essential to his people's survival as fire itself.
As evening approaches, a call echoes from the edge of the forest. The hunters have returned. Their hunt was successful. They have brought down the great aurochs. The entire camp springs into action. The mood is one of joy and relief. The work of butchering the colossal animal begins, a communal task that reinforces the bonds of the clan. The meat is divided, not according to who made the kill, but according to need. The family with a new baby receives a prime cut. The old, childless woman receives a share. The law of the clan is the law of sharing. To hoard food is the greatest crime imaginable. Tonight there is a feast. The smell of roasting meat fills the air. The fire, now a great roaring blaze, pushes back the darkness of the forest and the chill of the night. It is the heart of the community, a circle of light and warmth. The faces of the clan are illuminated, their expressions relaxed and happy. There is laughter, there is food, there is life. After the meal, as the children begin to fall asleep, and the fire burns down to a hypnotic glow, the old woman, she who remembers the sun, begins to speak. The lively chatter of the clan fades, and all attention turns to her. She is the storyteller, the keeper of the histories. Her voice is a low, rhythmic chant, a language that has been spoken in this valley for 1,000 years. Tonight, she does not tell a story of a great hunt. She tells a story of the world's beginning. She speaks of the great spirit of the forest and of the giant serpent of the river. She tells of how the first people were born from the rich, dark earth of Doggerland itself. Her story is not a scientific explanation. It is a tapestry of meaning, a way of understanding their place in the universe. It connects them to the land, to the animals, and to the generations that came before. Kale and Brenna listen, their children asleep in their arms. They have heard this story 100 times, but tonight, after a successful hunt and with full bellies, it feels more true and more powerful than ever. This
was a day in the Mesolithic, a day of risk, of skill, of hard work, and of deep community. A life that was, in many ways, unimaginably difficult. But it was not a life of misery. It was a life of profound connection to each other, to the land, and to the spiritual world that infused every rock, every river, and every living creature. It was a life of meaning, lived in the heart of a lost and forgotten world.
To live in the Mesolithic Doggerland was to be a part of a conversation, a constant, silent dialogue with a world that was intensely alive. For our ancestors, the line between the physical and the spiritual was not a sharp one. Every animal, every river, every ancient tree was imbued with its own spirit, its own power, and its own story. The world was not a collection of resources to be exploited. It was a community of powerful, non-human persons to be respected, appeased, and understood. To survive was to know the ways of these spirits, to read their signs, and to honor their strength. Let us leave the human camp for a time and walk out into this wider, spirit-filled world. We will follow the tracks of the great beasts, to see them not as mere fauna, but as the people of Doggerland saw them, as the living gods and guardians of the land.
Deep in the primeval woodlands that lined the great rivers lived a spirit of immense power and untamable fury, the aurochs. To encounter one was a moment of pure, heart-stopping awe. Imagine standing in the dappled light of the forest, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and moss. You hear a heavy crashing in the undergrowth, and then it appears. A great bull, standing 6 feet tall at its muscular shoulder, its coat the color of dark, rich soil. It lifts its massive head, and you see its horns, long, sharp, and pale, curving forwards like a deadly crescent moon. Its dark eyes, ancient and intelligent, fix upon you for a long moment. There is no fear in them, only a deep, formidable presence. This is not just an animal. This is the wild, untamable heart of the forest made manifest. For your people, the aurochs was the ultimate symbol of strength and vitality. To hunt it was a great and perilous undertaking, but to succeed was to take some of its immense power into the clan itself. The horns of a great bull might be mounted on a shaman's staff or placed at the entrance to a shelter, a potent symbol of protection and strength. The stories told around the fire would speak of the aurochs not as a beast, but as a dark god of the woods, a being to be respected and feared in equal measure. If the aurochs was the spirit of dark power, the red deer was the spirit of grace, cunning, and life-giving abundance. They moved through the forests in great, fluid herds, their reddish-brown coats a perfect camouflage in the shifting light and shadow. To hunt the deer was a test of skill and patience, a deep understanding of the wind and the terrain. But they were more than just a source of meat and hides. The annual migration of the deer herds was a great sacred event in the calendar of your people.
It marked the turning of the seasons. The appearance of the herds in the spring valleys was a promise of life returning after the long winter. The shedding of the great stag's antlers was a symbol of renewal, of death and rebirth. Your people would gather these shed antlers, carving them into the barbed harpoon points that brought you fish and the tools that scraped your hides. The deer, in this way, was a spirit that provided for you even without the violence of the hunt. It was a symbol of the land's generosity, a graceful, fleeting spirit that embodied the quiet magic of the deep woods.
And then there was the wolf, the spirit of the long, dark night, the other great hunter. Your relationship with the wolf was a complex one, a mixture of fear, competition, and a deep, grudging respect. The wolves hunted the same deer and boar that your people did. You would often cross their tracks, find the remains of their kills. At night, listening to their howls echo across the river valley, you felt a kinship with them. They too were social hunters. They too cared for their young and worked together to survive. They were a mirror to your own clan, a rival nation of hunters. But something remarkable was happening in this era. A slow, cautious alliance was being forged. Perhaps it began with a lone wolf, driven from its pack, lingering at the edge of your camp, drawn by the smell of roasting meat. Perhaps it began with a litter of pups, their mother killed in a hunt, brought back to the camp and raised by the children. Over many generations, this relationship of tentative trust began to deepen. These wolves, less fearful and more cooperative than their wild brethren, became partners. They were not pets, they were companions in the hunt. Their keen senses of smell and hearing a perfect complement to your human intelligence and weaponry. This was the dawn of domestication, not an act of conquest, but a pact, the first great treaty signed between the human world and the world of the animal spirits.
The true heart of Doggerland, however, was the water. The great rivers and the sprawling marshy shores of the central lake were a world teeming with life, and therefore with spirit. Imagine standing at the edge of a reed bed at dawn, the mist rising from the water. The air is filled with a symphony of sound, the deep, booming call of the bittern, the trumpeting of cranes, the whistling wings of thousands of ducks taking flight. This was a world of incredible, noisy abundance. The water was the source of a different kind of bounty. In the spring, the salmon would run, a great silver tide of fish pushing up the rivers to their spawning grounds. For your people, this was a time of feasting and celebration. You would build weirs of wood and stone to channel the fish, spearing them with your barbed harpoons of antler. The salmon was a spirit of resilience and determination, a gift from the distant, mysterious sea. The pike, a long, patient predator that lurked in the shadows of the reeds, was a spirit of cunning and surprise. The eel, a strange serpentine creature of the deep mud, was a spirit of darkness and mystery. To live in Doggerland was to be intimately connected to the cycles of the water, to its moods, its dangers, and its endless generosity. This was the outer world, the great community of spirits your people lived within. But there was another world, just as complex and mysterious, their inner world, the world of the human mind. How did they make sense of it all? How did they grapple with the great questions of life, death, and their own place in the cosmos? The clues are rare and subtle, but they speak of a rich and deeply symbolic inner life. Let us return to the camp, to the quiet afternoon. An artisan, a woman known for her skill, sits outside her shelter. In her hands, she holds a small, cloudy piece of amber, that sacred stone of solidified sunlight. With a sharp flint flake, she is slowly, patiently scraping and polishing it. But she is doing more than just shaping it. She is etching a series of fine, deliberate lines onto its surface, a pattern of nested chevrons and crisscrossing lines.
But he is not sent on his journey empty-handed. His finest flint axe is placed in his hands. A necklace of pierced animal teeth is laid around his neck. These are not just possessions, they are a part of his identity, the tools he will need in the spirit world. And then the most remarkable part of the ritual begins. The matriarch comes forward with a pouch of powdered red ochre, a deep blood-red mineral pigment. She sprinkles the powder over the body, staining the skin and bones of vibrant red. Red, the color of blood, the color of life. This is not an act of mourning, but an act of rebirth, a magical attempt to re-infuse the body with the life that has fled it. The grave is then filled, a silent testament to a belief that life is not an end, but a journey, and that the person is more than just a body. They are a spirit that will continue to exist in another realm. This complex inner world was likely guided by a shaman, a spiritual specialist. Imagine a night of the full moon. The clan gathers around a great fire. The shaman begins to chant, their voice low and rhythmic, accompanied by the steady, hypnotic beat of a drum made from aurochs hide. The shaman dances, their movements becoming more and more frenetic, a dance that imitates the spirits of the animals. They are on a journey, a trance, traveling out of their body and into the spirit world. They are going to ask the spirit of the deer for a successful hunt. They are going to battle the dark spirits that cause sickness. They are the bridge between the world of the clan and the great unseen world of the spirits. To be a human in Doggerland was to live a life that was woven through with these two worlds, the outer world of the hunt, the gathering, and the daily struggle for survival, and the inner world of art, of ritual, of storytelling, and of a deep spiritual connection to every living thing. It was this rich inner life, this constant search for meaning, that made them more than just successful animals. It is what made them profoundly and completely human.
Their minds were as complex, their emotions as deep, and their questions about the universe as vast as our own. They were a people who lived on the very shore of the wild, their feet planted in the rich earth of their physical world, and their eyes turned to the great, mysterious ocean of the spiritual one. But the physical world itself was on the verge of a great and terrible change, and the rising waters of a new era were about to flood their lands and their memories forever. The world of our Mesolithic clan, so rich in life and spirit, was built upon a foundation that was geologically temporary. Their home, their entire country, existed only by the grace of the great ice sheets to the north. It was the ice that held the oceans at bay. And now the ice was in its final retreat. The Great Thaw was not a distant, abstract event. For the people of Doggerland, it was a slow-motion flood that would last for 1,000 years, a rising shadow that would eventually swallow their world. This was not a single dramatic event, but a long, slow, and anxious unraveling. Imagine the story told not in years, but in generations, passed down from a grandmother to her granddaughter around a dwindling fire. The great-grandmother would speak of a world of vast open plains. She would remember, as a child, walking for 2 days from the river valley to the edge of the great salt marsh. Her stories would sound like legends of a mythical, expansive past.
Her daughter, the grandmother, would remember a different world. In her lifetime, the Great Salt Marsh had become a sprawling brackish estuary, a maze of tidal creeks and muddy islands. The herds of red deer no longer came down to the lowlands. The journey to the sea was now only a single day's walk. Her stories would be of a shrinking world, of ancient hunting grounds lost to the rising water. And now, for you, a young woman of the clan, the world is different still. The sea is no longer a distant concept. It is a constant, dominating presence. The high spring tides now lick at the edges of your settlement, forcing the clan to move your shelters to higher ground, further inland. The air is always thick with the scent of salt. The freshwater springs your people have used for generations are becoming tainted. The rising water is like a slow, patient predator, and it is hunting your home.
The psychological toll of this slow retreat is immense. It is a story of constant loss. The ancient burial grounds of your ancestors, the sacred groves where you made your offerings, are now being claimed by the sea. The great rivers that were once the arteries of your world, connecting different clans and territories, have become wide, dangerous saltwater barriers, isolating you from your neighbors. The very map of your world, held in the memory of your people, is being forcibly redrawn with each passing generation. Life becomes harder, more precarious. The rich inland hunting grounds are gone. Your people are now forced to become masters of the coast, more dependent than ever on fishing, on sealing, and on the meager resources of the tidal flats. This is a time of immense stress and adaptation. Some clans might have moved west, towards the high, chalky spine of what would become Britain. Others might have retreated east towards the European mainland, but for those who stayed in the low-lying heartland of Doggerland, they were living on borrowed time, on a landscape that was slowly but surely becoming an archipelago of desperate, isolated islands.
This was the long, slow twilight of Doggerland, a world of rising waters, of shrinking lands, and of a people trapped between the memory of a vast world that was and the reality of a dangerous, watery world that was coming to be. And then, after centuries of this slow retreat, the final catastrophic blow fell. Let us journey to one of the last islands of Doggerland, around 8,200 years ago. It is a low green hill, perhaps only a few dozen miles across, a final remnant of the great central plain. A small community of people, the descendants of our clan, are living here. They are a people of the sea now. Their lives are governed by the tides. Their diet is of fish and seabirds. They are survivors, clinging to the last piece of their ancestral homeland. The day begins like any other. It is calm, the sea is placid. The hunters are preparing their hide-covered boats. The children are playing on the shore. Then something strange happens. The tide, which should be coming in, stops, and then it begins to retreat.
But this is not a normal tide. The water pulls back with an unnatural speed, exposing a vast and alien landscape that no living person has ever seen. The seabed stretches for miles, a glistening plain of mud, seaweed, and stranded, flapping fish. For a people who are struggling for food, this is a miraculous gift. There is a sense of confusion, of awe, but not yet of fear. The people walk out onto the newly exposed land, gathering the bounty of the seafloor, their calls echoing in the strange, sudden silence. An old shaman, perhaps, feels a deep wrongness in the world. She feels a tremor in the earth, a sickness in the air. She looks out to the new, distant horizon and sees something that does not belong. A dark, thin line, a line that seems to be growing, rising. Far to the northwest, off the coast of Norway, a section of the continental shelf the size of Iceland has just collapsed. A vast underwater landslide known as the Storegga Slide. This event, driven by the shifting pressures of the post-glacial world, displaces an unimaginable volume of water, and it gives birth to a monster, a colossal tsunami.
It moves across the North Atlantic with the speed of a flying bird, a silent, almost imperceptible swell in the deep ocean. But as it approaches the shallow continental shelf, as it enters the basin of the dying Doggerland, that energy is forced upwards. The wave rises from the sea. The thin, dark line on the horizon is now a wall of black water, 30 feet high, spanning the entire horizon, and it is moving towards their island with an impossible, silent speed. The time for understanding is over. The time for running is over. There is nowhere to run. There is only the sight of the world's end coming for you.
The sound arrives first,
a low, guttural roar that grows until it shakes the very air, a sound that drowns out all thought, all cries. And then the wave hits. It is not water, it is a liquid sledgehammer, a chaotic mass of churning sea, mud and debris. It does not wash over the island, it obliterates it. It scours the land clean, stripping away the soil, the trees, the shelters, the people. It is a moment of absolute, elemental violence. In a matter of minutes, the work of 8,000 years of human history in this place is erased. And then, silence. The sea settles over the drowned land. The last island of Doggerland is gone. A few survivors, perhaps, who were in boats further out to sea or on the highest ground to the west, might have lived to tell the story. A story of a great, world-ending flood that came from the sea and swallowed the homeland of their ancestors. A story that might have been passed down for generations, eventually fading into a distorted, half-remembered myth.
This was the end of Doggerland. Not a gentle fading, but a violent and definitive conclusion. It was the final, tragic act in the long drama of the great thaw. The rising sea had been the slow, creeping antagonist, but the tsunami was the final, swift executioner. The memory of this world was washed clean, its story entrusted to the cold, dark silence of the seabed, waiting for a new kind of human, thousands of years later, to begin the patient work of listening to its echoes.
And so the water falls silent again. The great wave recedes, and the North Sea settles over its new domain. The last island is gone. The last voices are quiet. An entire chapter in the human story, a world that had thrived for thousands of years, is now a silent landscape of mud and memory, sealed away beneath the waves. Our journey, which began with a single dark piece of bone pulled from the sea, has led us through the life and death of this lost world. With the tools of science, we drained the sea to look upon the face of a forgotten country. We walked through its ancient woodlands. We felt the warmth of its people's fires. And we stood as silent witnesses to its terrifying watery end. The bone harpoon in the fisherman's hand is no longer just a mysterious clue. It is a relic, a sacred object imbued with the full tragic weight of a world we can now, in our mind's eye, see so clearly.
The story of Doggerland is a profound lesson in the impermanence of things. It teaches us that the world we see is not a static stage, but a dynamic, ever-changing entity. The maps we draw are temporary sketches. Our coastlines are not fixed boundaries, but the shifting shores of our current geological moment. The people of Doggerland lived in a world that felt as real and as permanent as our own. Yet their entire country, the very ground beneath their feet, existed only on loan from the great cycles of the planet. But to see this only as a story of loss is to miss the deeper truth. The people of Doggerland did not truly vanish, they adapted. They were a people in motion. The blood of the clans who retreated west to the high ground of Britain and of those who moved east into mainland Europe did not disappear. It flows in the veins of countless people alive today. Their story is not a separate, isolated tragedy. It is a foundational, forgotten chapter in the story of modern Europe. They are the ancestors, the deep roots of a family tree whose branches have spread across the entire world. Their echoes are not just in the deep, but in ourselves.
And it is this connection, this shared humanity, that gives their story its most urgent and powerful meaning. The people of the Mesolithic were not a primitive, alien species. They were us. Their minds were as complex, their emotions as rich, their love for their families as deep as our own. And they faced a reality that we are only now beginning to grapple with again. The profound, world-altering consequences of a rapidly changing climate. They lived through a period of intense global warming, a natural thaw that melted the great ice sheets and drove the seas inland. They did not have science to explain what was happening, only their stories and their senses. They saw the world changing before their eyes. They witnessed the loss of their lands, the disappearance of the great animals, the salting of their fresh water. Their story is a sobering, 1,000-year-long testament to what it is like to live on a planet in a state of profound environmental flux. It is a reminder, written in the very bedrock of our history, that coastlines are fragile and that the pact between humanity and the sea is a delicate one.
Today, our own ice sheets are melting again, and our own seas are beginning to rise. The story of Doggerland, therefore, is not just a tale of the deep past. It is a quiet, cautionary whisper from our own ancestors. It reminds us that we too are a coastal civilization, that our own world is just as subject to the great, powerful forces of the planet. Their lost world serves as a humbling mirror to our own. But the final echo from the deep is not one of fear, but of wonder. The sea, which we so often see as a barren, empty expanse, is in fact a great and silent museum of our own history. It is a keeper of secrets. Beneath its waves lie not just Doggerland, but countless other stories of our human journey, a testament to the thousands of generations who have lived and died by its shores.
The next time you stand by the ocean, perhaps you will see it differently. As you look out at the waves, you can know that you are looking out over a landscape of hidden hills and drowned river valleys. You can imagine the sound of children's laughter, where now there is only the cry of gulls. You can imagine the light of a campfire, where now there is only the deep, cold dark. You can feel a sense of connection to that lost world and to the people who called it home. The story of Doggerland is a reminder that we are a species with a deep, complex, and often hidden history. It is a story of survival, of adaptation,
and of the incredible resilience of the human spirit. And it is a story that is still being written, with every new clue that is pulled from the patient, silent depths of the sea.
The next time you stand by the ocean, perhaps you will see it differently. As you look out at the waves, you can know that you are looking out over a landscape of hidden hills and drowned river valleys. You can imagine the sound of children's laughter, where now there is only the cry of gulls. You can imagine the light of a campfire, where now there is only the deep, cold dark. You can feel a sense of connection to that lost world, and to the people who called it home. The story of Doggerland is a reminder that we are a species with a deep, complex, and often hidden history. It is a story of survival, of adaptation, and of the incredible resilience of the human spirit. And it is a story that is still being written, with every new clue that is pulled from the patient, silent depths of the sea.